Bobby Shaftoe's gone to sea, silver buckles on his knee. He'll come back and marry me, bonny Bobby Shaftoe.
600 years ago, in a little German town called Hamelin, all the people lived very happily, until one terrible day, hundreds and hundreds of nasty rats came into the town. Nobody knew where they came from, but they were certainly big and nasty. Brown rats, black rats and grey rats ran all over the town, scratching behind walls, getting into people's houses and in and out of kitchens, spoiling lots of nice food and making horrible squeaking noises wherever they went. The people did everything they could to get rid of them, but the rats were too clever to be caught in traps, and even the town's dogs and cats couldn't catch them. What could be done? All the people went to see the mayor of Hamelin and told him that as he was the mayor, he should find a way to get rid of the rats. The mayor paced the floor of his office, wondering what to do. Just then, there was a knock on his office door.
"It's probably another rat knocking,"
he said to himself, and he opened the door quickly to try to scare the rat away. But it wasn't a rat at all. It was a strange man. He was very tall and thin, with dark skin and white hair. He was dressed very strangely in a long coat. Now, half the coat was red, and the other half was bright yellow.
"What do you want?"
asked the mayor. The stranger answered in a strange voice. "I know a charm," he said, "that will make all creatures follow me. Whether they creep, crawl, fly, run, swim, or just walk, I can make them follow me. I have travelled all over the world. They call me the Pied Piper. If you pay me 1,000 pieces of gold, I will get rid of all your rats."
"I will pay you 50,000 pieces of gold,"
said the mayor as a rat nibbled at his shoe. The Pied Piper pulled out a magic pipe from under his coat and went out into the street. He blew 3 strange notes on his magic pipe, and immediately there was the sound of hundreds of tiny feet. Pitter-patter, pitter-patter, pitter-patter. The rats ran out of houses, shops and drains from every direction all over town and followed the Pied Piper as he played a magic tune. On and on he walked, playing his flute as he made his way towards the edge of the town. More and more rats followed, listening to his magic tune. The mayor and everybody looked out of their windows in amazement as the Pied Piper marched on through the streets of Hamelin. Soon the Pied Piper reached the river, outside of the town, and all of the rats plunged into the river, never to be seen again. All except one. One big grey rat swam across the river to the other side and ran off to Ratland and told all the other rats who lived there the strange story about the Pied Piper. All the rats in Ratland were very scared and said they would never go to Hamelin again. Back in Hamelin, all the people were very happy. They were ringing the church bells. The mayor looked very pleased, standing there in the market square telling everyone to clear up all the mess that the rats had made, when suddenly up jumped the stranger in the red and yellow coat and asked for his 1,000 pieces of gold. The mayor suddenly looked very sadly at the Pied Piper.
1,000 pieces of gold? Oh, come now, I thought you were only joking. As if we'd give a stranger 1,000 pieces of gold just for getting rid of a few rats. Oh.
"Keep your promise," said the Pied Piper. "Otherwise I will play a tune you will not like." The mayor got very nasty and angry and said,
"I don't care what you play."
And everyone in the town laughed at the Pied Piper. The stranger in the red and yellow coat lifted up his pipe and played 3 sweet notes, loud and clear. Everyone watched as the Pied Piper marched off through the streets, playing a magic tune as he went. Suddenly, the sound of small feet running filled the streets as all the children in the town were caught in the Piper's magic spell and followed behind him as he marched out of town. All the children ran and skipped and danced along, as all the grown-ups stood very still and could not speak a single word, for they were under a spell as well. Instead of going towards the river, the Pied Piper led all the children towards the mountains. A big door suddenly opened on a mountainside, and the Pied Piper and all the children from the town went inside. Then the door closed, and all the children and the piper had gone. All except one little boy. He could not run as fast as the other children, and so he had turned back to the town. His mother and father were very pleased that he had come home, but the little boy was very sad. He told his parents that when he had first heard the magic tune the Pied Piper had played, it was calling the children to go to another country, where the flowers had colours that no one else had ever seen, and little brown sparrows were all brightly coloured, and horses had wings, and everybody in that country lived very happily. When this little boy had grown up, he told his children and his grandchildren how once, when he was young, all his friends had gone away with the Pied Piper and left him behind. And he drew pictures of the Pied Piper to show them what he had looked like in his long coat of red and yellow.
Here we go round the mulberry bush, the mulberry bush, the mulberry bush. Here we go round the mulberry bush on a cold and frosty morning.
Here we go gathering nuts in May, nuts in May, nuts in May. Here we go gathering nuts in May on a cold and frosty morning.
This is the way we chop the wood, chop the wood, chop the wood. This is the way we chop the wood on a cold and frosty morning.
Many years ago, in a land of snow-capped mountains and deep pine forests, there lived a wealthy merchant who had 3 beautiful daughters. So beautiful was the merchant's youngest daughter, with her flaxen hair, apple-red cheeks and blue eyes, that she was named Beauty. Beauty's 2 sisters, although pretty, were very jealous of the younger girl and always scolded and teased her. The merchant gave his daughters fine dresses and jewellery, and they lived in a fine castle surrounded by tall trees and lofty peaks. But the 2 elder sisters wanted more and more beautiful things, and they sulked and quarrelled when their father failed to bring them gifts. Soon the sisters' greed and jealousy began to make them ugly, and their faces became sour and wrinkled. Beauty, however, cherished everything her father bought for her, and she loved him dearly. As the days went on, Beauty's 2 sisters grew uglier and uglier, but she became prettier, and soon she was the most beautiful girl in the land. One day, during a terrible storm, the merchant's fleet of fine wooden ships was lost at sea, and he travelled back to the castle to tell his daughters of his great misfortune.
"No, my riches are gone,"
he told the 3 girls sadly.
"and we shall have to find a much smaller house to live in. This castle must be sold to meet my debts, and I shall no longer be able to buy you all fine things."
The 2 elder sisters stamped and sulked, scorning their poor father, but Beauty took him tenderly by the hand and comforted him. "Father," said Beauty, "all is not lost, for we shall still live happily together, even in a much smaller house, and I will tend and care for you." "Huh!" snorted the 2 elder sisters. "And what are we to do without gold and jewels and this fine castle?" As each day passed, the 2 sisters became uglier and more ill-tempered, and they scolded Beauty so much that hatred began to show in their eyes. Beauty, however, remained bright and cheerful, and once the merchant had found a small cottage at the edge of the forest, she busied herself with the task of making their new home look bright. Not long after the merchant and his 3 daughters had moved from the fine castle to the humble cottage, he received news that his fleet of wooden ships had been saved from the fierce storm.
Daughters,
he cried.
Good fortune has smiled upon us. It was another merchant whose ships were lost at sea, and not mine. We are still rich, but I must journey to a distant port to meet my captains. Upon my return, I shall bring you each a gift.
Bring us jewels and clothes, demanded the 2 elder sisters excitedly. Would you bring me a single white rose, Father? Asked Beauty.
I will bring you as many fine things as I can, replied the merchant. But do you desire only a rose, Beauty?
I do not wish you to buy gifts for me, Father, but roses are my favourite flowers, and I should like to place one in the garden of our cottage, where it can bloom each year, said Beauty. The merchant saddled his horse and journeyed to the port, which lay many miles away. But when he arrived there, a messenger greeted him.
Sir, alas, thieves have stolen your cargoes, and your ships lie rotting in the harbour.
The merchant turned sadly away from the harbour. The gifts he had promised to buy for his daughters he could no longer afford, and his eyes filled with tears. The journey home seemed endless, and gradually darkness began to fall, and the poor merchant grew weary. Suddenly the road through the forest became unfamiliar, and the merchant realized that he was lost. The sky grew blacker, and the trees became thicker as the merchant rode deeper into the forest. After many miles, the merchant stopped to rest in a forest glade, hoping that when morning came he could find his way once again. As the sun rose above the forest, the merchant stirred from his sleep and made his way once more through the thick forest. But the road was still unfamiliar, and he became frightened, for he had heard many tales of thieves and robbers attacking lonely merchants in the forest. The forest soon became so thick that he was forced to dismount and lead his horse through the narrow tunnel of leaves and branches. He stopped and searched in all directions for familiar signs, but he found none. Without food and water he would surely die, and he had come unprepared for such a journey. All of a sudden, a figure stepped from the trees and greeted the merchant.
"Here, you look tired, my friend,"
said the figure.
"I can offer you food and shelter before you continue on your way." Thank you,"
stammered the merchant.
But who are you, and where are you from?" "I live in a castle not far from here,"
replied the figure, whose face was hidden by the forest's gloom.
"You must follow me closely, and I will lead you to safety. For it is not good for a man to travel alone in these woods."
The merchant and his horse followed the figure until they came to a large clearing in the trees, on the other side of which stood a castle with many turrets and towers.
"This is my home,"
said the figure.
"I will walk ahead of you and open the gates. You may leave your horse in the stable, where he will be fed and watered."
The merchant entered the castle through a wide gate and handed his horse to a stable boy. "My master awaits you in the great hall," said the lad, pointing to a wooden door at the top of a flight of stone steps. The merchant climbed the steps and entered the hall. Inside, a log fire blazed merrily in the grate, and a huge table was laden with food and wine. The merchant, having travelled for so long without food and drink, sat down at the table and began to feast himself on chicken and ham and rich ruby wine, giving little thought to the figure he had met in the forest. Having eaten and drunk all he possibly could, the merchant rose from the table and walked to a window set in the far wall of the dining hall. The window looked out onto a garden full of flowers, and there, in the middle of the garden, was the most beautiful white rose he had ever seen.
I must take the rose and give it to Beauty,"
said the merchant to himself. He walked through the wooden door again, across the castle courtyard and into the garden, where he plucked the white rose from its stem. No sooner had the merchant taken the rose than a voice boomed out.
"So, you would steal my flowers, eh?"
said the voice. The merchant spun round in surprise, and there in front of him stood the tallest, ugliest creature he had ever set eyes upon. The creature's face was covered in patchy black hair, and his teeth were like the claws of a cat. His red eyes were filled with fury as he spoke to the merchant again.
I saved your life in the forest, and I brought you to my castle for food and shelter, and yet you repay me by stealing from my garden. I will kill you for this. Oh, forgive me,
Pleaded the merchant.
I meant no harm, and I was only taking the rose to give to my beautiful daughter.
The merchant told the creature of his many misfortunes and pleaded once again for mercy.
Very well,
said the creature.
I believe your story, and will therefore forgive you, but on one condition. I shall allow you to leave my castle unharmed, if you send one of your daughters to me in return. Your horse is saddled, and in the saddlebags you will find jewels for your other 2 daughters. Go, but return here within a week with one of your daughters.
The merchant rode off from the castle, thankful for his life, but dismayed at the thought of losing one of his daughters to this frightful creature. Eventually, the merchant came to his cottage at the edge of the forest, and the 2 elder sisters rushed to meet him. "What have you bought for us, father? What are our gifts?" they shouted. Beauty came to the door, smiled at her father, and kissed him tenderly on the cheek. "I am happy that you are safe and well, father," said Beauty. Beauty, who was not selfish and greedy like her 2 sisters, did not ask for gifts. Instead, she made her father a bowl of hot soup. Once inside the humble cottage, the merchant told his daughters of the fearful creature in the forest castle.
Although he has asked me to send one of you to him in return for my life, I could not do such a thing,
said the merchant sadly.
He is so terribly ugly that he would frighten you. Instead, I will leave you the jewels he gave to me, and I must return to his castle within 7 days.
The 2 elder sisters remained silent, gloating over the promise of jewels. But Beauty spoke softly to her father. "I will go to the creature in the castle, for I love you dearly, father, and I am sure that he cannot be so bad if he grows such beautiful roses," said Beauty. On the 7th day, the merchant finally agreed to take Beauty to the ugly creature in the forest castle, and they made preparations to leave. Bidding farewell to her 2 sisters, Beauty mounted her father's horse, and the merchant led the way through the forest. After many hours' travelling, the merchant and his daughter came to the castle gate. He took Beauty in his arms and kissed her goodbye as the huge wooden gate swung open. Beauty stepped into the castle courtyard and looked around her. The door to the great dining hall where her father had eaten and rested a week before was open, and she entered. There before her was a table covered in the finest food she had ever seen.
"Welcome to my castle, my child,"
said a deep voice. Beauty turned to where the voice had come from, but could see nothing, for much of the great hall was hidden in darkness.
"Your father is a noble man, and I'm sure that he has told you of my ugliness,"
said the voice.
"But you have nothing to fear if you came here willingly. I will not harm you, Beauty, but my ugliness may frighten you."
Suddenly, a figure stepped from the shadows of the great hall and stood before Beauty.
"I am called the Beast,"
said the figure, and Beauty looked up in horror as she saw the creature's face.
"If you are good and kind and will stay in my castle, you will be rewarded,"
said the Beast. "But you are so ugly," said Beauty, "and I am frightened." Just then, a tear fell onto the Beast's cheek, and Beauty realized that he was sad. "Oh, don't cry," said Beauty. "I am sorry. I did not mean to be so unkind, and I will stay in the castle with you." As time went by, Beauty grew fond of the ugly creature. One day, the Beast took Beauty gently by the hand and said,
"Beauty, you have been very kind to me, but I must ask one final thing of you. It is the most important thing of all, for if you refuse me, I shall die."
The Beast paused for a minute and then continued,
Will you marry me, Beauty?
Begged the beast. I am very fond of you, but I could never marry you, cried Beauty.
Then I must die,
said the beast.
I cannot make you do such a thing, for I know that my face frightens you. Go then, Beauty. Your father is ill, and he needs you. I will lead you through the forest.
The beast led Beauty through the forest to her father's cottage and said farewell. She turned and smiled sadly as the ugly creature rode off through the trees. Beauty ran into the cottage and went to her father's side. Father, I am free. The beast told me of your illness and brought me home, said Beauty.
Oh, thank you for coming, my child, but I am really quite well again,
said the merchant, delighted at seeing his daughter once more. The days passed, and Beauty's father grew stronger again. Beauty, however, began to grow pale and thin, until one day she said, Father, the beast asked me to marry him, but because he was so ugly, I refused, and he brought me back to you. But now that I have been away from him, I know that I love him, although his face is so frightening. I must return to the castle, said Beauty. When Beauty returned to the castle, she found the gate was closed and the great building was very silent. Beauty knocked upon the great studded door until a little shutter was opened, and the stable boy answered. My master is dying, said the lad, but I will take you to him. The stable boy led Beauty up winding stairs and through gloomy passages until they came to a small turret room, where, covered in rags and straw, lay the ugly beast. As Beauty knelt down by his side, the beast's eyes opened slowly, and he spoke.
Beauty, when the great bell in the clock tower chimes midnight, I will die unless I am kissed by one who loves me,
whispered the beast. But I love you, said Beauty softly. You are so kind and gentle, and I don't mind your ugly face at all. Beauty moved her head towards the beast and kissed him on the lips. And then a strange thing happened. The turret room was suddenly bathed in a flash of golden sunlight, and in the distance Beauty could hear the tinkling of bells. The light in the room became so dazzling that Beauty covered her eyes with her hands. A roll of thunder filled the small room with sound, and then a voice said,
Beauty, I said that your kindness and patience would be rewarded. Look down on the bed of rags.
Beauty looked down, and there, where the dying beast had been, sat a handsome young man dressed in a scarlet uniform.
I am a prince,
said the young man, taking Beauty's hand in his.
But many years ago, I was cursed by an evil witch, and she turned me into an ugly creature. You, with your beauty, kindness, and patience, have broken the spell, and now I can live happily again.
Within a few days, the prince and Beauty were married, and they lived together in the fine castle in the forest. Beauty's father came to live with them, and they lived happily for many, many years. But the two greedy sisters were never heard of again.
In Dublin's fair city, where girls are so pretty, I first set my eyes on sweet Molly Malone, as she wheeled her wheelbarrow through streets broad and narrow, crying cockles and mussels, alive, alive, oh. Alive, alive, oh. Alive, alive, oh. Crying cockles, cockles, mussels, mussels, alive, alive, oh.
Once upon a time there lived an old man and his wife who were very happy but very poor, and the only thing they really wanted was a child of their own. One day, while the old man was in the forest chopping a big oak tree down to make some firewood, he heard a small voice say,
"Dear kind man, please don't chop this tree down."
The old man looked up and saw a beautiful lady sitting on a branch of the tree.
"I am the fairy queen of the forest,"
she said.
"If you keep chopping the trees down, soon I will have no forest left."
The old man stared at the fairy in disbelief and promised not to cut down any more of her trees.
"Thank you, and for your kindness I will grant you one wish."
Then she disappeared into the branches again. Well, the old man ran all the way home to tell his wife about the fairy queen, and his wife said,
"Oh, if it's true, and we can wish for anything we want, then I think we should wish for a little boy of our own."
The old man agreed, and as soon as they had made their wish, there was a tapping noise on the front door. The old couple rushed and opened the door, and at their feet they saw a little boy who was no bigger than the old man's thumb. "Hello," said the little boy. "My name is Tom, and I'm your son." The old couple were overjoyed with little Tom, but because he was so small, the old man had to make a special chair and a special little bed for him, while the old lady had to sew special little clothes for him. Well, one day the old man decided to go fishing and took Tom with him. They sat together on the riverbank, and soon the old man fell fast asleep. Tom went to the edge of the water to look for some fishes. Suddenly a big fish leapt out of the water, and Tom slipped off the bank and into the large fish's mouth. The next morning, further down the river, a local fisherman caught the big fish, and he took it to the king for his dinner. The king was delighted and smiled broadly as the fish was placed on the dinner table. And just as the king was admiring his fish, little Tom climbed out of its mouth. How surprised everyone was! The king and queen were so delighted with this tiny little boy, they decided to keep him for themselves. In the weeks that followed, Tiny Tom lived like a prince. He had the finest clothes to wear and even a doll's house to live in. But the king realized that Tom was not happy. "Surely you have everything you need," said the king to Tom. "No, I haven't," said Tom. "What I really want is my real mother and father." The king and queen decided to let Tom go back to his parents and call for their soldiers to give Tom a safe escort home. The old man and his wife were still crying over their lost son when they heard a tapping sound at the front door. The old man opened the door and was overjoyed to see Tom standing at his feet. Having seen Tom safely home, the king's soldiers marched away.
"Welcome home, Tom,"
said Tom's mother, with tears of happiness filling her eyes. "It's nice to be home," said Tom, and they all lived happily ever after.
What are little boys made of? What are little boys made of?
Frogs and snails and puppy dogs' tails.
That's what boys are made of.
What are little girls made of? What are little girls made of?
Sugar and spice and all things nice.
That's what girls are made of. Where are you going, my pretty maid? Where are you going, my pretty maid?
I'm going a milking, sir, she said. Sir, she said. Sir, she said. I'm going a milking, sir, she said.
Who killed Cock Robin?
I said the sparrow with my bow and arrow.
I killed Cock Robin. All the birds of the air fell a sighing and a sobbing when they heard of the death of poor Cock Robin, when they heard